Oh, man. Big
And we on, man. Okay, so, man, I want to start off with I guess you can call it the most recent thing. Like you did a career change. Like you were like halfway, maybe more than halfway through round one of one passion, and then you redirected, reverse engineered the whole deal, went back to the starting line, and started all the way over again. And so you were in school for a grand total of how many years?
I believe 8. I believe it was 8.
That sounds a little bit like law school on the real.
Mm-hmm.
So what brought it about? Like, can you remember when the change started to happen, when you started to like fall out of love with this and fall into love with this?
Well, I think if we really honestly look at it, I wasn't originally in love with the original path. The original path, I was doing physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about that was I always kind of had an interest in something in the healthcare field. And then, we had Uncle Elliot in a physical therapy position and in somewhat of a managerial role where he was working. So it was always understood, all I got to do is get a degree in this field and I'm going to be set. I'm going to have a good job. Looking at his lifestyle, it looks like it's going to be one that's going to be quite lucrative. And, that, growing up, all you want is something where you're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so we started going that path, and I, went the route of TCC because they have a physical therapist assistant track, and then you can, catapult that into, a 4-year program. And I had completed all of the gen eds almost, and I was at a point where I needed one more class because, the financial aid requires you had 4 classes, the standard 12 hours, and I only had 3 more required courses before I was satisfied with TCC. I had satisfied all the requirements, and so I went to an advisor and we sat down and they actually suggested sign language. And at that point, it was like, kind of laughable to me. But they were like, if you're going to be in the healthcare field, you're going to run into somebody that's likely going to be deaf. So go ahead and sign up for sign language. And again, as I mentioned before, there wasn't really a love for the physical therapy. So when I was going through the classes, I was passing the classes, but I wasn't enjoying it. I didn't really feel like I was fully consuming the information. It was just, okay, we sit through these lectures, take the notes. I got it enough to go pass the test and do the homework.
Right.
And so it was just checking a box. It wasn't a real passion.
Right.
And when I started dabbling into sign language, it was something that I was enjoying. And it was school-based, which was something that had never happened. We didn't enjoy school, or at least I didn't. It was just something I've got to do it, college is included.
But you were good at it, though. You always been a good student.
Yes, very much so.
Huh.
But,
That's
who really enjoys school? I mean,
I get it.
Looking back on it, there are things I miss about it now.
Yeah, you didn't miss the academic piece.
Exactly.
Feel it.
Yeah.
Feel it. So I've always wanted to ask you that particular question. How in the hell you got through having that great of a length of time in school? You know what I'm saying? And also, I've always known you as somebody who, like, you've not always been very flexible. You know what I mean? You've always been like, all right, this is my plan, this is the path I've carved, and
that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, it's what we're gonna do. I'm walking these steps.
Yes.
But like we grown now, so now when we look back on it, I'm like, yeah, that sort of never really happens. But like, how were you, I guess, mentally having to do all that pivoting that you were having to do and having to change the course and actually be flexible?
Going through it was frustrating.
Yeah.
And my path wouldn't have been as long if I wouldn't have been so resistant or so stubborn, I think, because when I started venturing into the sign language courses, it was clear, okay, I'm liking this. I'm really enjoying this. And, me and Mama even talked about it. And she was like, I could tell this seems to be something you're really feeling, But my thing was I am 2.5 years in to a track right now. So starting over was not an option. I didn't want to start over. I was like, we're already too far in this. We got to go. Because I was trying to get it done, 4 or 5 years or so. And then right when I hit college, the track I was doing, the physical therapy track, became a doctorate program. They went away with bachelor's. It went to master and doctorate only, and the master programs were few and far between. So doctorate was looking like the track I was going to have to do. So that was becoming even more daunting,
Yeah.
looking at an 8-year track. And so I was juggling the two for about 2 years, which meant I completed the TCC courses and I kind of stuck around at TCC to keep my foot in the sign language classes, And so I was juggling the two, and it got to a point where I was forced to make a decision, and it wasn't really, I guess you could say, in my hands, because my plan was do the TCC route, gonna go NSU Broken Arrow, get the bachelor's, and we're gonna go OU and do the doctorate. Well, NSU required 3.0 GPA, had 3.6 at the time, so we were good.
Yeah.
I applied, never heard anything back. Didn't get a letter declining me, didn't get a letter accepting me. When I reached out, they told me you have to wait for your letter. That's not a decision they give you over the phone or email. You got to wait for the letter. So time kept passing, and it was like, all right, it's time to do something because school's about to start.
At that crossroads.
And I had literally maxed out the classes I needed at TCC for this track. So at that point, that's when I switched to sign language. And I had already been taking sign language courses for 2 years at that point and was really becoming invested in it. So I just felt like that was, I guess, my sign where I was forced to pivot.
So it was going to be 8 years had you stayed on the physical therapy track, and it ended up being 8 years anyway.
Yeah.
Because you had to start over.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. So if it's going to be the same length of time, I figure you may as well enjoy the ride. So I'd say you made the right call. So, like, your field is scarce when it comes to men, right?
Absolutely.
And it's even more scarce when it comes to black men.
Very much so.
Did you think about that at all before you realized it?
No, none of that was things that I even thought about or knew about until I got in the program, and everybody was making this big deal about me being there.
Right.
And to me, it was just like, every other student here, what's the big fascination with me?
Right.
And then as I started going through it, and when I started taking the classes, mind you, I said 2 years I was taking sign language, and I was not interested in doing interpreting. So, each semester when you're in college and you're undeclared, they're asking you. They're constantly asking you, what are you doing? When are we going to declare? And so that became, the whole thing. Like, you need to be in this field. This is a field that is 98% female dominated, no black males. So they were pushing, and that's when it became evident to me that, okay, this is something a little bit more than just, a simple track.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't know going in. No, I didn't.
Okay, so at that point, once it became evident, like, okay, this really kind of matters, you've always been sort of a perfectionist anyway. Did that add any more fuel to that fire? Like, okay, since I'm one of the few, I got to really be dope.
Not really, simply because I've always had that in me. I always want to be the best. If this is the milestone or the ceiling, I'm trying to find out how we can eclipse that.
Yeah.
That's always how I've been. Just like, once I left TCC, I went through 2 more institutions and gained 2 more degrees, and I never even made a B. And that was, something that was important to me, is not to make B's. So I've always kind of had that perfectionist quality in me. So I don't think that really fueled it.
Okay, so in grade school, all the way through high school, when you were getting good grades, I know it's hindsight now, so you may or may not be able to remember everything, but were you consuming on the way, or were you checking boxes then too? And what I'm really gearing up to ask you is, like, when did you start actually learning again, as opposed to just getting good grades? You know what I mean? Like, intentionally grasping whatever content that you're going in the field of.
Specifically in college? Well, as soon as I started taking the sign language courses, I became a sponge because, like I said, my interest was instantly piqued.
Right.
So it was a willingness to learn. There was a want to learn. So even when I was out the classroom, I was in the computer labs, in the libraries, at home in the books. I was going to events, submersing myself in the environments and around the people that I felt like I needed to be around in order to gain the knowledge I needed to be successful. So it just, the interest was enough for me, I think. So, and I learned all throughout college, don't get me wrong, but, with the physical therapy courses, it was just, like I said, there was so much that was given us that it got to a point where we're checking boxes. There was no interest there, but there was learning. And I find that I still am able to use that information when I go and interpret, specifically in healthcare settings, because I did do 2.5 years of that track, and the foundational courses are the general stuff, like your medical terminology and the ethics and the breakdown of healthcare and the anatomies and the physiologies and biologies. So I did learn. It wasn't an enjoyable experience. And I wasn't consuming it at the rate and the level it needed to be consumed to really see myself going and being a doctor and doing this, if that makes sense,
Makes a lot of sense.
So,
Man, so when people would ask me what you're doing, even now when they ask me, hey, what is he up to these days? It's like I'm proud to say what you actually do, because it's so far from what people would link to you if they know you. And maybe especially if they don't know you, because you got the physical presentation, man. You come in here, you dark in the mud, you got the cornrows, you got the goatee, Pastor Troy style. You know what I mean? And then they say sign language, interpret. I'm like, oh yeah, fuck with him. You know what I'm saying? see how good he is with it.
I like that. I like to have the appearance that I have, and people to make the assumptions they make. And then once we sit down and have a conversation, I start to open a little bit wider, and minds start to open, and energy changes. And so I like that.
Can you remember a moment, maybe the age you were, where you arrived, where it's like, okay, I get this now. I'm nice. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I don't know that I would use the term arrive, because in this field you never truly arrive, but I get the question. And I don't know what age I was or how long ago it was. Maybe maybe a year or so after undergrad. I started, feeling, because there's a lot of things that go into this work that we do. There are a lot of wheels turning, a lot of things going on at the same time. And that was a struggle for me. And being able to see it done effectively, I was able to kind of gauge myself. I'm like, okay, yeah, I know I've got a lot of work to do to get there. And there would be those experienced interpreters or my professors.
Right.
And so
several years in.
I don't even, like I said, I don't know that it was a specific age or what it was, but I remember it was a time where I was interpreting, and I couldn't stop kind of grinning and smiling. And it was because it was like, okay, it's fine, it's working. And I could feel it working, I could see it working, and I knew, it was a feeling. I was like, okay, this is working, and it's kind of becoming a little more effortless.
Yeah. And
it's always requires effort, mentally, physically, all of that, doing the work we do. But it's gotten to a point where it's never, I don't know, I don't want to say easy, but it just, it's kind of second nature to me, because I'm always around deaf people now. I'm always navigating language and culture. So it was just that moment where I was doing it, and it was coming to me so easily, and it was just, everything was clicking. All the cylinders were firing. And it was just one of those moments where even the deaf consumer was like, what's going on? Because I kept just kind of grinning, and it was just like, everything was clicking in that moment. And I knew, I was like, this is what it's supposed to feel like and what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And so it was that for me.
That's hard, man. Because, you actually have changed my mind frame when it comes to the way I think about deaf people. Because I used to be like ultra sympathetic to folks that have any type of deficiency, and I use that word respectfully. But but anybody who may not be as wired as regularly, with the air quotes, as you and I, but now I look at them as just as able and capable as you and I. And a lot of it had to do with, whenever you would be telling me or telling mom and dad, and I'm just listening to what all goes into it. It's like, oh, okay, cool. They're gonna be all right.
Right, they're very much able people, and they don't want or need the sympathy from hearing people at all.
Yeah. All right. So, what you told me one time, y'all have, by my standards anyway, strict parameters in terms of your physical presentation in that field. Like, what can you wear? What can't you wear whenever you're going to work outside the house? Let's say you got an event you got to go interpret for.
Well, the general rule of thumb is a color that contrasts the skin, which for me, that requires a little bit more finesse sometimes, because going through school, they made it kind of black and white, literally. If you were a white interpreter or of lighter complexion, you wore black. And if you were darker complexion or, my color, you were white. And so that's where we started. But when I got out in the field and became more experienced in working with different groups of people, I found that white wasn't always the best choice for me. But nonetheless, a color that contrasts the skin, so pastels, light blues, grays, light yellow, soft orange, something like that. No jeans, no jewelry unless you're married. Your wedding ring is acceptable. Okay. No jewelry, earrings hanging. If you do wear earrings, preferably a stud. Um, tongue rings, no facial piercings, none of that. Got to keep the beard intact so the lips and the mouth and everything is visible.
That's the most
Got to keep the
understandable.
nails trimmed, and so yeah, just keep everything neutral. The clothes can't have a logo. No polo horseman or anything like that. Got to be neutral, solid shirt. No stripes. No,
Dang.
no type of design. Just got to be plain, solid color.
Did you ever ask why, or did you ever get an explanation as to why that is?
Because it's easier on the eyes.
All right.
That's the way it was explained to us, and I understand it specifically working through a screen now. Working on a computer, there are certain colors and certain designs and patterns that aren't easy on the eyes, and they make it hard to sit there and focus on this space that you have to watch for an extended amount of time. So that's why. It's just to make it easier on the eyes and make, remove any potential complications to an already complex process. Just make it as.
Hey, how much money did you have to spend creating that wardrobe, getting it the way you needed to be, man?
I'm always updating the wardrobe, still today.
All right.
Yeah, so it's a never-ending expense.
What changed for you during the pandemic?
Everything went virtual for me.
Okay.
My work went 100% virtual at home during the pandemic, and there were opportunities here and there to step out of the house, but I didn't take many of them because whenever I would step out of the house, it felt like every time I would step out, I would get sick, even following, the protocols that they had in place, they being CDC and, the health people. But so I just opted to stay home. Plus, with the amount of work that was available to me at home, it really was hard to justify going out the house when I didn't have to. So
Other than I just want to get out of the house.
right, so yeah.
Right.
And now, a lot of my work has become permanently at home as a result.
Do you prefer that now?
I do.
Did you prefer that then too, or is it something you just had to do?
No. Well, initially, whenever it was offered to me, I didn't jump on it to work virtually because I wasn't sure how that was going to work in my house and how that was going to all play out. So I didn't take it. But once I saw, okay, this pandemic is something that's going to be around and this is going to go longer. So when they offered again, I jumped on it. And it wasn't really a hard decision for me because I'm one of them. I'm a homebody. I enjoy being at home. And the thought of being able to work at home, to me, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. Speaking of at-home stuff, you also sort of like, you had a gym membership at one time, and I guess you just sort of like officially or unofficially, suspended that and just started doing all your workouts at the house. But what I'm really wanting to talk about is like you were way heavier at one point. And then you sort of made a little bit of a well, I ain't gonna say a little bit, a lot of bit of a transformation, man, and dropped quite a bit of weight in what I would consider to be a relatively short amount of time. Go into that, man. What brought it about? How long ago was that? And just how much did you shed consciously?
Oh, I believe that was the year before the pandemic hit.
Okay,
so I guess that would be 2019.
Yeah.
2019. Because in high school, my weight kind of went up and down. It fluctuated. Because I don't know if you remember, I think it was coming back junior year or from junior year to senior year, I had a huge weight drop.
Junior to senior.
Yeah, junior to senior year.
Yeah.
And so I had a very significant weight drop then. And that was just from, being an athlete and just the activity that came with being a basketball player. And after high school, I probably stayed consistent in the gym for about a semester or so.
Yeah.
And then that stopped. And then the weight started coming back on. And it just, I don't know, I can't necessarily say you because you haven't necessarily been big, but
Right.
For me, it was always one of them things where it was a number far out there. Like, yeah, I'm never going to be that. And then the closer you got to that, it's like, hold on. And for me, that was 300. I was like, I'd never be a 300-pound person.
Right.
Not going to happen.
Not gonna happen.
And 2019, so how many years ago?
Yeah, 3 years ago.
So at the time, I was 27, 28,
28,
because I just turned 31. And I stepped on the scale, and I was 307. And for me, that was it. I was like, oh, hell no. I was like, I'm not about to be a 300-pound person ever, let alone in my 20s.
Right.
And so from there, we went hard, And I had worked out before in the past, been an athlete my whole life. And so I knew how to get the weight off, but I also knew I wasn't a full-time athlete anymore. I wasn't in high school. I wasn't playing basketball. We didn't have all of that, so I had to do something different. And so instead of just working out, I approached the diet as well. And so I got me a low carb, low calorie, high protein, high vegetable diet,
Yeah.
and started working out. And in a little over a year, I got from 307 to 196. The goal was to get to 185, and then start to incorporate more weights and just kind of build on that.
Yeah,
but I got to about 196, and then that's when pandemic hit, and so the gym shut down, and so I moved everything to the house.
Had to reinvent again.
Yeah.
Dude, like, that's quite the journey, man.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. And see, what I've always been told from folks who have walked a similar path, they say the heavier you are when you first start, like consciously losing weight, trying to and working out, you drop quite a bit of weight rapidly. And then when you get you get to a certain point to where it's sort of like you plateau, so to speak, and it gets harder. You went through that too?
Yeah, I did hit some plateaus. I don't necessarily feel like they were early on, as I hear from other people's stories, though. Because for me, I initially, probably the hardest part was getting out of the tubes.
All right, yeah.
Getting out of the tubes.
No,
for the longest, I was sitting in the tubes. And prior to that point, I was seeing big drops. And then it got to a point when it got to around 215 or so, that's when it started getting a little frustrating, because we would drop maybe 210, then the next I may wait 2-3 weeks and weigh again, and now we up 2-3 more pounds. Then we drop, and so it was like almost that concept of breaking even. We were staying in that 215 to 210 range. And so it almost got a little bit discouraging, because it's like, damn, I can't get out of the 200s.
Right.
And then once I finally broke the 200, that was really the hardest of the plateaus. And from there, it was just, like I said, trying to get to 185, which I never got to 185.
Right. 196.
But, it is what it is.
Yeah, you for sure got closer than arm's reach on that, though.
Yeah.
So when you hit that rough patch, did you have to do anything different to finally push through? Or you did?
I would just vary the workouts, because I'm very system based, as you know. I'm a routine type of person. And so, once I started becoming more informed and talking to people, like one day I ran into Trey McVeigh at the gym.
Oh, that's the
and
right
he
person.
Actually,
right
he saw I was losing and started asking me what I was doing. And of course, first thing he said, well, how's your diet? And what workouts are you doing? And started giving me all these pointers and stuff. And so after talking to him, I started varying the workout, And so I started incorporating the pool more, and kickboxing, and not just doing cardio. And then you mentioned incorporating weights. And so just varying that workout and diversifying it. And that pretty much kept it going.
Did you ever get bored at all? Even though you are a routine person, I've learned about myself. I'm active. I like to work out too, but things can get a little stale for me some days, where it's like, yeah, I see what I have listed for this Thursday, but I'm getting ready to freestyle this and go off script, and that's good enough for me to reset. Did you ever have some moments like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And for me, initially, I don't know, I had a 2-hour mark. That was always in my head. We're gonna go do 2 hours, which meant an hour doing some weights, and we're gonna do an hour of cardio.
Right.
But I didn't enjoy the weights.
Gotcha.
I didn't enjoy weights, and so there were a lot of days where I'd be like, man, I'm just gonna go ahead and do the cardio and get out of here, because what we really trying to do is lose weight.
Right.
So
that's true.
Or I go in and do like 30 minutes, but then I would have days on the other end where I wouldn't want to do the cardio, because I would every day go in there and do an hour, on either the elliptical or the treadmill. And so there'd be some days where just I don't feel like doing it, or I could be 30 minutes in and be like, man, I ain't got 30 more minutes. Or my knees would be like, man, this elliptical ain't it. And so I would have those days. But constantly seeing the number decrease on the scale and seeing my body change, that was kind of motivation in itself to keep me pushing.
Clothes fitting differently and all that?
I had to get all new clothes. It wasn't even a matter of fitting differently, because we went from wearing 46 to 34 in pants.
Waist. Oh yeah.
So it wasn't nothing I could do but replace my clothes. 3X shirts to 1X shirts.
Man, that's
huge.
huge.
We had to replace everything.
You're around the space I am. You know what I'm saying? XL top
everything.
with the 38 bottoms. Man. So was it hard? Oh, yeah. Last point about the physical transformation. How hard was it to adjust your diet, man? Because like we foodies, we eaters, man. You know what I mean?
It was tough. Mainly just it gets boring. you know,
True.
because I was so strict on what I was doing. There wasn't many options I felt like I had as far as eating, and so that it was hard because it gets monotonous. And then we were doing our, every Saturday going out to eat with mom and daddy,
Yep.
and then going over there on Sundays after church. And obviously they not cooking according to my diet; they
No.
cooking just because they cooking.
Yeah.
And so
And you eating.
those times made it difficult. Then going out to events when we have deaf events, or just going out with my friends outside of my work colleagues, and just we're going out to eat. And it gets difficult to stick to that diet when you're going to places like that. And then you got your drinks and all of that.
Yeah.
And so it got tough. And that's probably the one area that took the biggest hit when the pandemic started. I kept working out, and I still work out, but the diet is not nearly as strict as it was.
Right.
You know.
It's a little looser.
Yeah.
And that is definitely understandable, man. Because I was filthy during the pandemic, without a doubt.
Still ain't quite got back.
Nah, man. Nah. Same here. But but you sort of have to kind of have to be social at those social events.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's fun, but it's work related at the same time.
So then I look at my life now. I got 2 other people in my household now.
Yeah.
So I can't force them to eat that way.
Right.
And so
That's a true story.
So things have changed in that regard.
When it comes to the events that you have to go and work at, in my mind, before you broke it down to me, I figured it was pretty much in a relatively small box. But you might be at a ball game, you might be at another sporting event where they fighting. You know what I mean? You might be at a school, you might be at a hospital. Like, where are some of the places all that you can recall where you've been, where you had business as an interpreter? That is.
Well, I mean, I've been in every hospital in this city, and several surrounding hospitals. We go into schools, the big time grocery stores, your Walmarts, your Reese's, your Targets.
That I didn't know.
Yes, your casinos, your tax offices, your IRS offices, your doctor's offices.
Yeah.
Anywhere that we as hearing people go, any place that we go into, deaf people go into those places as well. That's probably the easiest way I can explain it. Anywhere that people go, deaf people go to, we just go along with.
Right.
And we're that bridge, for communication. But
are y'all to be seen and not heard, so to speak?
Going through school, that was kind of the way things were, but we're kind of coming out of that.
All right.
Because in school they kind of told you that you're not seen, you're not heard, you don't have an opinion, you're kind of just doing this, just passing along language. And while there is a degree of neutrality that is required from us, we're not robots.
True that.
We are human beings. You're gonna have opinions, you're gonna have feelings. It's just being able to keep that at bay while you're doing the job that we're tasked to do. But we're there, we're very much visible, and are a part of the entire, the interaction. So not really.
Has it ever been difficult for you to, I guess, maintain that neutrality and just and not let your emotions get the best of you in a moment? And I know that's broad, so let me break it down. Let's say you're in a classroom setting. Okay, you're there on behalf of just one kid in this particular class, but maybe you got some other kids in that class that are, being assholes, for lack of a better word. And I know you've been anti-bully for a long time, so you may see a kid or hear a kid getting out of control.
I was a vigilante growing up.
That's right. You're a tyrant out here.
Yes.
And so how hard is it for you to respectfully stay in character and not come out and check this kid that's cutting up?
It can be difficult, and I've experienced that and I don't do much school interpreting at all now, but fresh out of school, I did a 2 or 3 year stint at Broken Arrow High School. And it may sound funny, but we're in this era now where it's almost like cool to be black, and you have those that aren't, that
I know exactly
try a little too hard. And being out there at Broken Arrow, saw it all the time. It's largest school district in the state.
Yeah.
And everybody out there thinks they so cool, and just walking through the hall, all you hear are kids conversing like how you hear people going down the halls where we went to school.
Yeah.
N-word this, N-word that. And
yeah.
it's just like, nobody here lives that life. Nobody here is that. And so ignoring that sometimes, and I remember one time I was interpreting an art class, and it was so frustrating because seemed like every 4 words out this kid's mouth was the N word, and he was just clearly, you know, wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard, because he was the loudest one in the room.
That kid?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Loudest one in the room, just constantly talking, just up and going, and the instructor never said anything. And so, you know, while I'm there, my role is to interpret, you know, so that's what I'm doing. I'm interpreting the interaction, but you got this side chat over here. And so it got frustrating, you know, and the instructor never stepped in. And so that was one of those moments where I kind of stepped out of role, but I don't even consider it stepped out of role. It was something that just needed to happen. And it wasn't anything big or grand that drew attention. It was just one of those, you know, just real quick, just leaned over like, hey, I don't want to hear no more of that coming from you. You know, and that was the end of that. But yeah, you see a lot, you hear a lot in the school setting, and honestly anywhere, you know, that can get you to a point where it's kind of difficult. You know, one of the ones that's probably the most challenges is when I see an injustice happening or something being done wrong to the deaf consumer and they aren't taking action on it. Those are the tough ones. But what we've learned is we've got to just sometimes let life happen. You know, like I can recall being in situations where places are being resistant to provide accommodations that are just simple accommodations or necessary accommodations. And instead of putting up a fight, you know, the deaf person may just be like, oh, okay. Or, you know, just kind of accept it. And for me, that's tough because, you know, I don't accept nothing.
Nah, you really don't.
You know, I'm one of them. I don't compromise. I'm not one of those type of people.
Not when it comes to the BS.
You know, and right, exactly. And I don't back down from, I'm no fight. You know, I'm not. And so for me, those are tough. But, you know, we have to just learn that this is not my place. This isn't my appointment. This isn't my interaction.
Yeah.
And just, you know, kind of have to let life happen.
I will never not subscribe to the fact that it takes a village.
Yeah.
As cheesy and as cliche as that is, but man, we have to police the youngsters because it was done for us. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, this gonna sound like a cop out, but they don't be knowing.
Yeah.
Like they don't be knowing sometimes, or maybe they do, but they're looking for the boundaries. And it's like, okay, well I can show them to you if you need me to, you know. And so yeah, I feel for you in that regard because that's a tough deal. So let's talk about home. So you grew up, man. It was you and I, and I go by school years. You know, I was born in '88. You was born in '91, but we 2 years apart in school. So I'm gonna say I'm 2 years older than you. And now, I don't know if I can ever think of a time where it was just you and I, and then mama and daddy in the house. We always had more. You know what I'm saying? But for the longest time, you were the youngest, the baby of the bunch. How was that? How was your experience as far as you recall growing up in with that being your reality?
Because I guess it was so normal to us, and it was the reality for forever. You know, because when I was born, Chris was already there.
Yeah.
You know, and so for me it was all right. I will say once it got to the point where y'all were all phasing out the house.
Yeah.
That was the moment where it was like, okay, I'm going to truly be the only one here and be the baby, you know, because we always had younger cousins or somebody there. So although I was the baby as far as their biological child, there was always somebody younger than me in the house, you know. And so when it got to a point where it was just us for that little bit of time and you were going off to college and it was about to be just me, you know, I could kind of start seeing that, I guess, that light at the end of the tunnel. Not necessarily at the end of the tunnel, but you get what I'm saying. And
you were looking forward to that, though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just, you know, like I said, we never lived in the house with just us and the parents. And then it was about to just be me and the parents. But that never really materialized either. Because, you know, we always, you know, had to, you know, open our doors. We didn't have to, but that's just always the type of people our parents were, you know. That, you know, when we had people in our lives that were struggling or needed help, they opened up their doors and helped them or provided whatever help that was needed. So, you know, it wasn't really something that I had resentment towards, but you and mama, like, super tight. Like that's your lady. You know, you've been a mama's boy for as far back as I can remember. Talk about y'all's relationship. How do you think about it? I often joke with people and say that we're the same person, just opposite genders. You know, because we are so similar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird because a lot of times sons have that relationship with their dad and daughters have it with their moms. And, me and daddy have a really good relationship. But I just think about with me and mama, there is nothing that we don't talk about. There is absolutely nothing that's off limits. Whereas there are certain avenues I won't venture down with daddy.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. It's not like there's one better than the other. It's just, I don't know. There is literally no secrets that me and mama keep or have kept.
Right.
And it just has always been like that. I don't know. Like she gets me.
Yeah.
And that's my girl.
I see it a little differently. I see it the opposite from what you just broke down. Not us specifically, but generally speaking, I'm seeing more nowadays like the sons are linking with their mothers more. They seem to be tighter with mom, and then the daughters and dads are like this. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing more of that. Now, of course, all of it can exist, and it does. But I think I see it more the way I just broke it down than other ways around. And then, we're opposite because you and mom like this, but me and daddy like this.
Exactly.
That is my guy. But me and mama, we've gotten a lot closer here recently, and like I've gone to her with some things that I ordinarily wouldn't. You know what I mean? And what's so wild is, our parents, like, she is the one that's not as emotionally expressive. Mm-hmm. I won't say that she's unavailable emotionally. She's just not as expressive. Whereas daddy over here, he's the lover. He just come on, just randomly hug you, tell everybody he loves you. It's it's like that. But I always felt a little, I guess you can say guilt, or maybe shame is the word, that I didn't have more of an intimate type of relationship with mama on that level. So I've been trying to be a little more intentional about, bridging that gap.
Yeah, it's interesting how that shift has happened, because as we've both talked about and acknowledged, me and daddy's relationship now, over probably the last 5 years or so, is different than it was before. Mm-hmm. We're much closer, because there used to be a point where me and mama spoke every single day. We was texting. We may not talk on the phone.
This when you were out of the house.
We texting, every day. Me and mama exchanging some type of communication. Yep. Now, that's daddy. Every day I'm hearing from daddy at some point.
About something.
Yes, he calling me, he texting me. Me and daddy talk every day.
Yeah.
If I'm in the area, I'm gonna swing by the house, So it's interesting how that has shifted.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So you and him, y'all weren't always ultra tight. I mean, it was always love, and I know it was always respect. But my vantage point, I look at y'all as sort of similar in some cases, as to, in my opinion, what caused some of the friction at one point, the head strength or head strongness. And you went through a period of time where y'all really weren't vibing, man. What was from your vantage point? What was that time period about? I would hear a lot of people try to diagnose you. You know what I mean? And try to talk about what you're going through and what you're doing and this, that, and the other. But I was like, all right, I guess I'll talk to the guy himself.
I think there was a bit of, of course there was a bit of maturing that had to happen. But I just, I don't want to say I was a bad kid, because I was not a bad kid. No. But I've always been one of them that has been very adamant that I'm gonna do what I want.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do what I want to do. And there were times where I wasn't doing what I should have been doing.
Right.
And daddy would come at me to where I would feel was the wrong way, because daddy's approach was kind of just like, no, you ain't gonna do this. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. You're not gonna do it.
Flat out dictatorship.
And me, I'm gonna resist. Like, hold on. Like, you're telling me what I'm not gonna do. Like, I'm gonna do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And instead of just seeing where he was coming from, I would verbalize what I'm feeling, which is what I just said.
Yeah.
And now we're dabbling into you being disrespectful,
This was before you came of age too, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. See,
and so
you can't do that.
It was kind of like that, And I've always been like that. Even when we got to school, it was the same way. It's like, I'm not gonna be a bad kid, but it's just certain things I'm gonna tolerate and certain things I'm not.
Uh-huh.
And I was just that way, Because remember in high school, there was a stint where they would put me in anger management to school, and they was like, he can't go back to classes until we complete this anger management track, because
hold on, I'm not sure if I maybe
you don't remember that.
I don't.
Yes,
that is funny.
It's horrible. Looking back,
I just remember the year after I graduated okay, so I'm a freshman in college, you're a junior here, and I would come home quite frequently, and man, I come back and visit the building, and the teachers would be talking about you like you was just a menace out here. They were like, hey, you need to talk to your brother, and they were like, you need to take him out back to the woodshed, saying all kind of expressions I don't even understand.
Yeah, and a few said those same things to me, and those got reactions out of me, because it's like, well, first of all, you're implying that a sibling is about to come be able to inflict some physical discipline on me. Like that.
That's wild.
That's not. No.
But that would be my answer then. I was like, well, I said, well, we've never had that type of relationship. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I can talk to him, but I'm not finna, what we gonna do, fight?
No,
For what?
exactly.
You know what I'm saying? That man, that was so funny, man. But I have students these days that sort of, they share that sentiment that you just gave, and I'll be looking at them like, look, when you're totally dependent, you can't really afford to have that mind frame. You know, and now when you taking care of your own business, right? You living someplace else where you footing the bill and all of that. By all means, do you, buddy?
Yeah. And it kind of just got to a point, both at home and at school, as far as, okay, let them say what they're gonna say, and you comply. But it's kind of like at work. Sometimes they send out emails or they tell you something, and you kind of in your head like, yeah, okay.
Right.
But you don't verbalize that.
Right.
It's just like, oh, okay,
right.
Yeah, that's not how we do this. But okay.
Not everything that comes to your head.
It got to the point where I got to the point where I learned that. It's like, okay, you don't have to react every time the teacher says this, or you don't have to get into an argument with Daddy every time we disagree or something. It just maturity set in, and
I feel that.
neither
one
shift
of y'all
happened.
Neither one of y'all would like back down. Though.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And not just with each other, but
stubborn.
with other people. You know what I'm saying? So that's when I was like, oh snap, there's a similarity here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? How was what are some of the things that Mama would say to you during those, following those spats that you and Daddy would have? Like,
Mama don't say much. Only
No.
thing she would say is, she would just try to come talk to me and try to diffuse it, and specifically, she would address the cussing. She's like, you can't just be cussing and talking crazy, every time you and Daddy want to get into it, because then, it puts me in a position, she's like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to witness that, and so
I feel
conversations like that, and then you start to feel it yourself too, just like, I don't want to be sitting here arguing with my daddy all the time and talking crazy and being disrespectful.
Right.
Yeah, so
it just sound like something that you sort of had to grow into or grow out of, so to speak. I remember
but I
he
think
called
also the older I got, the more that we kind of understood one another.
Yeah.
And they kind of let me be me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hear parents all the time, whether they're the older parents or younger parents, that they're steadily learning how to parent too. They're evolving as their kids grow up, because the relationship changes as the kids go from kids to grown.
And looking back on it now, I get it. I had some questionable friends. We did questionable things, and when you look at other people, a lot of times the people they are around is the person they become.
Yeah.
Or the stuff that they're doing sticks with them, or whatever the situation may be. But I feel like I had a different perspective, because I always knew the end goal.
Yeah.
For me, we had a life that we had growing up, and that for me had to continue.
You want to maintain that.
Yes. So I always had goals and my eyes on the finish line, and so for me it was just like, ain't nothing to worry about.
Yeah. You weren't off track.
I got this, And when I see people today and they be like, well, I was worried about you back then, I'm like, I don't know why.
Yeah.
Because I was not. I was never too far gone, or even close to being too far gone. I did some things, was with some people, had friends that
in some
some would probably.
Yeah.
But I always knew where I came from and knew where I was going, and so it was never in jeopardy for me as far as my future. Nothing.
Yeah. I was having a conversation the other day, man, with somebody. It may have been homie Antonio, who we both know. Was like, listen, I was in a lot of arenas where I probably had no business being, but I knew what my habits were and what they weren't. So I could be around and among the elements, but not necessarily partaking, not indulging. And I always sort of knew when it was time to go. But even in hindsight, I'm like, that's low key a justification, because I still shouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because we know some people who were just like the victim of a circumstance. It didn't have nothing to do with them because they were someplace that they shouldn't have been. And that just missed me, luckily, because I probably shouldn't have been there. Even though I wasn't doing nothing, I knew I wasn't doing nothing, I still could have got jammed up, but thank God I missed out on it.
Exactly.
And I suppose the same thing is true about you.
I just feel like now the relationship we have, because they've seen it modeled for over a decade now. Like, one thing you don't have to worry about is me and taking care of business. I'm gonna take care of my business. I'm gonna take care of business, regardless. That's I'm gonna be all right. And I think that that's something that's evident now, even to them. Like you ain't got to worry about me. Yeah. Like I got my stuff taken care of, and I'm gonna be good. True. And that's not to say that you don't never have to worry about me. I don't never need nothing, but it's just I don't feel like I was. One that really there had to be much concern about. So when I hear people say those comments, like, was surprised to see you where you are now, because where you were, and it's like, you clearly didn't know me.
Yeah. Like you're a big flight risk.
Yeah, you didn't know me.
True that. Well, speaking of taking care of business, you always been a relatively frugal guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember, I ain't gonna say the number, but Daddy had told me just how much money, ballparking, based on what he knew that you had saved up during the time that you were at home before you ultimately left and been gone ever since. And I was like, damn, I ain't never had that type of patience to put that amount of money away. Like, but you always been super disciplined with that, man. So who'd you get that from, or where'd you get that from?
That came from Daddy.
Makes sense.
Because growing up, we had the same experience. There was never anything we went without, whether it was a need or a want.
Within reason.
Yeah, like we got whatever we asked for. I just think about Christmas. Everything I put on that list, I got it every single Christmas. There was never a time where I was not expecting everything on my list. Yeah. Now, that didn't mean that I went into it with a arrogant attitude or like a entitlement, but that was just the experience that I had. Right. Everything on this list was going to be under that tree. Yeah. Even to this day, as a 31-year-old man, if I put a list in mama's hands, the stuff on that list is going to get purchased.
That's right.
And so, that, has never been something of a concern for me.
So you were just fattening it up, nesting.
And so for me, experiencing that, it was like, I want this same thing. And seeing Daddy, work like he did and make the money he did, but yet we never lived a careless lifestyle, or just, blew money with no regard. Nah. Although we had, we were fortunate. We were fortunate. But we didn't live a reckless lifestyle. And I saw Daddy modeling that, going to work, saving the money, investing the money, putting it into us, into the house, into things that are long-term wealth. And so for me, it was just modeling that same thing. We didn't struggle. We didn't go without. So I don't want to struggle or go without when I'm not under their household, and living off of them. Yeah. So, and they made it clear to us growing up that was no rush to get out the house. And when I started going through school, that was the whole thing. Just get the degree. Don't worry about nothing else. We got everything else. Just get the degree. And fortunately, when I finished at TCC, I was able to get credentials and start working in my field. And so when I was going through my bachelor's and my master's, I was working. And I was working pretty much full time. And I was putting gas in my car and buying meals here and there. And I bought shoes. Yeah. Other than that money went to the bank. And it just sat in the bank. And as you know, even having a job and having income that was consistent, living at home with mom and daddy, I still wasn't gonna have to come out of pocket, because if I'm with one of them, they gonna cover whatever it is. Yeah. When we go somewhere, when we go somewhere, I don't have to reach in my pocket and pull out my money. They got me.
They got it.
So I didn't have to do anything. So for about 4 years, I was working full time, making good money, just banking it, just getting myself in a position to where when I left, I would have comfort, and stability, and have a little bit of a cushion there. And I was still checking off goals. I was getting degrees and getting certifications. So I was still doing stuff. I wasn't just living there, working and saving money. I was working towards something bigger. And they knew that.
Yeah. They always say they'll help us do anything but nothing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And now we're at a point where there have been times when me and Daddy had conversations where he's like, you need to start doing something with the money. You can't just sit there and die with it. What you gonna do? Like, you need to live and enjoy yourself with the money. So
I remember
that's kind of changed a bit, because
that's not something
I can be a little too frugal.
that's that's something that I hadn't heard him say before that, and I was like, look at you evolving, talking about living it up a little bit, and now, you're a homeowner now too.
Yes.
When did that click in your mind? Like, yo, I'm done with the apartment life with respect, but I want to buy a house, man. And then you pulled it off by yourself.
Yeah. When I started the journey, the goal was have all my schooling done, and I knew I wanted a graduate degree. All my schooling done, and be a homeowner before or by 30. That was always the goal. And so, it took a lot of discipline, as you know. There was a lot of things I didn't do, didn't go to, didn't enjoy. I just work, school, repeat. That was my life for a long time. But I was able to do the things I wanted to do, which was I got my house, at 28. Then got my master's a few months later. And so
You're literally locked in.
yeah, yeah, you could say that.
Man.
And like I said, it came at the expense of a lot of fun and a lot of things because, like I said, the moment we got out of high school, I hit the ground running and went straight into college and never took a break. And along the way, I have 4 degrees to show for it. And
Slight flex.
I'm glad that I did it the way I did it, but I was, like I said, I was working full time through the whole journey. So there was never a moment where I didn't have anything to do.
Right.
And so now I'm enjoying that finally, where I'm able to get off work and I don't have nothing to do. I don't have no books to get into or something to study for or an exam to prep for at this moment.
I got 2 more things actually 3. You just got your national certification, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I feel like I cut that title short. Say it all to me. Like, what exactly did you just obtain?
That's what it's called. It's the National Interpreter Certification. We refer to it as the NIC, the NIC.
All right.
And in my opinion, it's the ultimate goal in this profession. When we were going through school and going through the interpreter training program, that was what was explained to me from my instructors. Like, yes, degrees, they carry weight, but at the end of the day, without this certification, you can't work nowhere. You can have all these degrees. If you don't have the certification, there is no work out there for you. And if you want to do things like teach at the college level without that certification, can't do it. Go into high stake venues like the courtrooms and things, you can't do it without it. And so it just, going through school, that was always the goal. National certification.
You always had your eyes on it.
That's the goal in this profession, or at least it should be. That's the pinnacle of the field in a sense.
How do you feel now that you got it?
I feel accomplished and proud, but at the same time, I keep finding myself with this feeling of, okay, what's next? And I shouldn't, and I don't want to feel that way because I have done more than enough. I feel like, I don't want to do any more school, and I really just want to enjoy this phase right now. But I do keep finding myself like, okay, I got it, and I'm happy, and I'm proud. But now, what next? What do I do next?
A couple weeks ago, I made that point. I can't remember who I was talking to, and this is just an opinion of mine. But it was sort of inspired by, I guess, somebody that I was listening to on a certain platform. But I think happiness and comfort is fleeting. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, in my mind, I'm always working toward, okay, when I get to this point where I can feel this way. But that feeling is going to pass. It'll be something else that we want to do, another goal, or we'll move the bar up a notch.
Because going through undergrad, all I wanted was my bachelor's. Like, I wanted a bachelor's degree so bad. I couldn't wait to get a bachelor's degree.
And once you got it,
once I got it, it was like, okay.
Next.
Damn, I want a master's degree.
Yep.
And so I do find myself feeling like that still because I'm one of them that likes to max out. And so it's like, why not max out? But when I start looking back at my journey, and it's like, this has been going on since 2009. I need a break.
Yeah.
I don't have any desire to go back to school and really invest in the grind again.
Yeah.
But I do find myself researching sometimes programs and looking just to see what's out there.
Is there a next level? Is that what you're trying to find out?
Well, by that I mean like PhD, doctor, because there is no, like, the national certification. Aside from that, would just be like specialization.
Yeah.
Like legal.
Okay.
Or pursuing something medical, but
not necessarily the avenue you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just considering that. I've thought about it because there is a a legal track that is available, a courtroom interpreter track that I could pursue. And I've considered it, even though right now courtroom is not something that is high on my radar, but I'm one of them that I like to be diversified in my skills and the things I am able to do, you know, and qualified to do.
Yeah.
And so I've considered it. And then, let's face it, if I was to pursue a court anything, that would be something that Daddy would be proud about, you know, and be honored about, you know, because that's his realm and his arena.
attorney.
So I've thought about that, and I mean, my main interest is more so healthcare. So I've thought about looking into something like that, like a certified healthcare interpreter or something like that. But yeah, we don't know. Who knows? Because right now I'm at a point where I don't want to do nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I've done enough. I'm always got something on my plate, and I finally don't.
Yeah. Smell the roses for a minute.
Yeah.
Last two things. You mentioned that you got two people living in your house with you. All right, you got your lady and her son. Man, talk about the role you've had to be in that young fella's life. And it's something that I'm pretty sure you didn't see coming or didn't necessarily prep for, but now you're in it. You know what I'm saying? And you looked at, I can tell just by how he communicates with you, that you looked at very fatherly by him. What's that like?
And that's the way he refers to me as well.
Oh, wow.
You know, he calls me dad, you know, probably 90% of the time.
Right.
He fluctuates from Daddy and Nate, but 90% of the time he does call me Dad. And it's been an interesting experience. It's obviously been an enjoyable experience having a youngin in the house and getting to experience raising a child and parenting and being able to invest in them and pour certain things into them that we experienced growing up.
Yeah.
Like right now, he's on this kick where he's into the Power Rangers and watching the Power Rangers. And you know, we went down that path.
What? Red
Heavily,
Ranger.
deep. But it's, you know, it comes with its challenges, of course, you know, because he's a kid. And right now we're at 4. And, you know, they say, oh, 2 is the worst, terrible 2s, and 3 will be a breed, or at least that's what I was told from a few people. Like 3 is going to be
all these nursery
much
rhymes.
better. And, you know, it doesn't go like that, obviously, for every child. Every child is different. And, you know, it's been interesting finding that balance as far as, you know, being a parent, disciplinarian, but being that one that he can come to and just building a relationship that isn't an authoritative role or relationship. Or, you know, so it's been interesting and challenging. But, you know, I love the kid like he's mine. You know, the experience has been great. And obviously me and his mom have a ton of history.
Yeah, man.
You know, it's 16 years now.
Yeah. Y'all was super tight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Shout out to that. Last thing, I need you to go through the alphabet and interpret it. You know what I mean? For the viewers that are watching that may have
For
no
correct
idea.
terminology, you mean sign the alphabet.
My bad. I need you to sign.
Because when we say
the
interpret,
alphabet.
we've got 2 languages here.
Okay,
we've
yeah,
got
talk to
2
me.
languages that
Okay.
we're gonna communicate through when we say interpret.
All right.
I.e., sign language, English.
Ah.
You know.
So excuse me.
Yeah.
Let me
So,
sign
yes,
the alphabet.
yes,
You know what I mean?
sign.
Just so folks can see what it looks like.
Okay. And we doing that at this one right here.
Man, listen.
We
Josh, wait, oh no, he coming with the camera right here, the main thing.
Go put
And this
me
how
on.
we'll close the show. You know what I'm saying? Because I noticed you do a lot of talking with your hands, whether it's a conscious thing or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It comes with the territory. It's become a part of me.
But yeah, it's needed, it's appreciated, and we, you know, I'm gonna tell folks, you know, for those in the deaf community, put the subtitles on the screen. You know
Yes,
what I'm saying?
very much so. We gotta get the captions on there.
Captions, man. And you know, my man over there doing a bunch of things at one time, one of the busiest men in the business, man. I love it. Cue this camera up, man, and gonna sign the alphabet. And then I'm gonna go eat. I think all y'all ate before I came up here, man.
That's right.
I was trying to keep it pro.
So we're gonna do that.
Yes, sir, man.
Right here at this lens. We ready to go? You want me to verbalize it with it? Okay.
Please do.
So we got our A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Man, my brother, I appreciate you, dog. I love you.
Love you too.
Get out of here.
So, karate, man. All right, we got to go back to that chapter. Like we were talking about a little bit off camera before the mics got going. We all started in it in the beginning. So we're talking me, talking you, talking our cousin Chris Pete. Me and him, we stayed in it for the long haul, but you didn't. Like you sort of, in a way, forced your way out of it. And I like I was telling you, I remember the day when you bowed out and it was your last day. Like you pretty much got out of the whatever we were doing on that particular day of practice, and you went and stood in the corner and you were not happy, man. I think you might have got a little emotional and everything, just frustrated. But I couldn't figure out what you were upset about. But I also thought you were gonna get in trouble for that. But you didn't. Like mom and dad let you not participate in karate anymore. But me and Chris continued. Not that we wanted to, it's just that I guess we didn't feel like we had that option to force our way out like you did. You know what I mean? So I always wanted to know what you hated about that experience.
For me, it was just expecting to go right into actual karate, combat, training the actual techniques for karate. And, kind of like with basketball, you don't start with picking up the ball shooting. You start on the baseline. And it was kind of like that. And at a young age, it was like, this ain't it. I'm ready to get right into the combat, the physical part of the sport. And all of that, it didn't appeal to me. And so, like you said, I went against the grain.
Oh man, but your next pivot was basketball though, which is a sport that we all grew to now love.
Yes.
And I dare say, I know it's my favorite sport.
Yeah.
Probably yours. Yeah. And I bet if we ask Chris, it's probably his too. But you went right into it. But he and I, once we sort of got out of the mix with karate, it was flag football first. You never played any football, whether it's flag or tackle.
Never.
It was all hoops, but we were late to the hoops party. So what I want to know is, was that a choice of yours, or was it a situation where mom and dad were like, hey, you got to do something? And so by default, it turned out to be basketball. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because it was so long ago, I don't remember how it started. Because, I started in kindergarten, so kinderball.
That's right.
But
Owen Park.
It was definitely, exactly.
Yeah,
it was definitely a choice to stay in it and not pursue any other sports such as football or anything else, because there was no interest there. So I don't know how it started, but it quickly became my interest and passion,
So I want to ask you about some of your teammates, some of the teammates you remember playing with at any level. You know what I mean? Whether it be from kinderball through middle school all the way through high school. Because who I remember to be one of your earliest teammates and also one of your earliest friends is Jordan Langston.
Yeah,
we
that's
both
my
know.
longest friend.
Yeah.
My longest childhood friend. Yes.
What's your earliest memory of y'all two?
Somewhere in I believe the Academy Central realm.
Yeah.
We were playing it because his dad was our coach.
Right.
So we played together then, because if I'm not mistaken, his daddy called him Boomer, or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But he had a nickname for him, and I feel like that's what comes to mind. But anyway, it was somewhere early days, elementary school, we were playing for his dad. And then later on, middle school, I played with Anthony Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all running with Coach Leva at that time.
Yeah.
The now girls coach over at
Running
Booker
at
T.
the Row Squad. Yes.
The Row Squad. Y'all kind of nice though.
Yeah.
So, how good were you early? Do you remember?
I think I started developing about middle school. Middle school is when I felt like I was decent. I always was able to shoot the ball. And that was probably my greatest strength that I brought was shooting. Or at least at that point, middle school. As I got older, I developed more skills and was able to impact the game in more ways than just that. But
yeah,
shooting is that was my claim to fame.
Okay, but you seem like at different points in your career you were kind of hesitant to shoot. Some would say. I would say you were just a very unselfish player. And I had some of those same traits too. Dad, he'd be looking at the ball, hey, shoot the ball. And some of our coaches, man, you shoot the ball. Even some of our teammates would tell us that.
Yeah.
But did you feel any of that while you were out there playing?
Yeah. And I think really it was one of those, it was weird. It was like if I wasn't wide open, I wasn't open.
There you go.
When looking at it now, it's like, it was plenty of opportunities to get a shot off. But it did kind of go back to that. I was a very unselfish player, but also I think part of it was a confidence thing too. Because when I'm in the gym alone or when we just having, small group sessions, the level that I'm willing to go is different than when I got an audience. And I'm still like that today. I don't know what it is. I don't like an audience,
Yeah.
And I just, not as comfortable. I won't, I guess, let loose as much when I have an audience, like I will when I don't. Which
Right.
I'm sure a lot of people are that way, but I feel like a lot of it was a confidence deal more so than anything else.
Yeah. I can remember some moments on some game nights where I used to wish that Mama and Daddy drove separate vehicles so we could ride home with the good cop after the game. How was that experience for you? Because you, and of course I'm talking about Daddy, but y'all always had a different type of relationship than me and him did. But I felt like in the sports realm it was similar though.
Yeah. In sports, me and Daddy we didn't have a real rocky relationship there. I mean, he said what pretty much everybody in the gym would say: you need to shoot the ball more, shoot it. You know, that's all I ever heard. I didn't get a lot of complaints. You know, I wasn't out there making a lot of mistakes. You know, and so that was really all it was. You know, that's all that I really would gotten onto about was my lack of shooting the ball. You know, so it really wasn't anything like that after the games from him. You know, just pushing me to shoot more. Or, but nothing.
It's all good. You dodged a couple bullets on that. Okay, so take me through the high school chapter. Once you come in, you come to Central from Thoreau, which is a little unorthodox based on what's supposed to happen, the feeders and all of that. But then you get here, and your freshman squad y'all were pretty solid, man. I just remember some of the names. You had Glenn Beasley on that group. You had James Harris on that group. Had Mike Bowie on that group. You had Pearly Graves on that group. You know what I mean? And I'm pretty sure I'm leaving some other guys out. But Jordan wasn't even over here yet. He was like, 2 years away?
Yeah.
Man, what do you remember about that squad and y'all's run your freshman year?
It was fun, I tell you that much. It was crazy. We had a lot of ups and downs during that season.
Man.
But one of the things that I really liked about it was one of the first times I was able to play what I felt like was my true position. Because like you mentioned, we had Bowie and we had Pearly, so they were in the paint. Yeah. And all throughout my life, I was in the paint because I was always one of the bigger guys on the court. But that was never really my position because I was a shooter. My long balls, I was a shooter. Yeah. And so that freshman year, I was able to play that 3 position because we had James at the 1, Glenn at the 2, then it was me, Pearly, Bowie. So I naturally was able to move out to that 3, which was where I wanted to be anyway. Yeah. And my freshman year, I was a lot more productive, I felt like, than the other years in high school because I was loose, I was free, and just, I don't know, I didn't have nothing to lose, I didn't have no pressure. It was just, like I said, it was free.
Let me not leave out 2 names because, they may check this out. I don't want to feel away. Cliff Demery. Yeah, yes. He's been calling for us to have this conversation for a while. And Trey Hawkins. He was on that squad too, wasn't he?
I think Trey was. Yeah, Trey was there as a freshman.
So, y'all were kind of
different. Trey kind of blossomed later, though.
He did.
Once we hit that sophomore, junior year, Trey then started blossoming into, Trey was always a defender, though.
Yeah, man.
Trey was a hound dog on the defensive end, but then he started to blossom, the following seasons.
Yeah, man. So, when you get that first at-bat, dressing with the varsity, that was your junior year, right? Okay, so you playing for the legendary Terry Scott, and that turned out to be his last year at Central before he moved on to Muskogee. And I remember, we talk about it even to this day still, there was a lot of turmoil going on during that chapter, but between him and the powers that be, and it was a sort of I don't want to say a rebuild, but one of those in-between type of years varsity-wise, right? But now you in the mix. What was your first year of varsity like?
It wasn't that bad, but being as tight as we were with Coach Scott, and our families being intertwined, he was always in my ear. And that year, I believe that was kind of the year me and Carter was kind of on rocky terms, wasn't it? The junior year?
Well, if we being frank,
sophomore.
It may have been your sophomore year. I remember your junior year, I remember Coach Scott and Coach Carter having a rocky relationship. They weren't on good terms at all. Wasn't no communication. So that's
they may be running together. And then to clarify, me and Carter wasn't rocky. Carter just wanted me to shoot the ball.
Yeah, that's right.
And so he'd be on me all the time.
Yeah, and you wasn't feeling it.
Yeah. But my first taste of varsity, it was fun. Obviously you kind of got to work your way into the rotation because we already had a veteran leadership and veteran players in place, but I don't even have one experience that stands out that was like, okay, this one was a bad experience. We had nothing but good experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that underrated, well, what goes undermentioned is that was Chris Watson in them senior year, and there was a lot of them.
Yeah.
It was like 7 or 8 of them.
And we had a hell of a JV squad too,
Yes, y'all did.
because we had all them seniors, so we still played with the JV and then suited up with the varsity as well. And so, you know, that's when we would really have a lot of fun too on that JV squad.
For sure.
But Carter would be on us.
Yeah, of course, man. That's around. Okay, now your senior year. This is what I really want to talk about. So we are under new management now, right? Randy Rutherford takes over after Coach Scott got let go, and he's now, Randy's now the head boys coach. Yeah, he's the head boys coach now at McLean High School, but and also Central dropped a class. We went from 5A to 4A that year. Talk about you and Randy's relationship first, man, because I know we had some stories. You told me some stories about how y'all started off, man.
Yeah,
We
started out real rocky.
All right.
You know, but
What type of shit was he on?
neither one of us knew one another. And you know
Okay.
me, I don't care who is in the room. I'm gonna say what I want to say.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, deliver it how I want to deliver it. I don't bite my tongue. And he came in kind of with a similar mentality.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, if it was a narrative that was being pushed, outside voices or what, but when he came in, it almost seemed like his perception was, y'all ain't had no structure over here, hence y'all ain't had no success. So I'm about to come in and show y'all how it's done. And in doing that, it was like, you kind of, in a sense, you kind of dissing Coach Scott, and that ain't, we had success over here before you came. No, and that's not taking nothing away from Rutherford because we had success with him. But it just was, in that moment, I felt like, he was disrespecting what we already had put in place, and so it just didn't sit well with me. And then he just, he was chippy, and he came in and he said how he feel, and he said how he want to say it. And I'm one of them that is big. I'm big on how you talk to me. If I feel like you trying to check me, or if there's a degree of power there, like I'm gonna push back just because I don't know. That's just how I was. You're not gonna talk to me a certain way. I just ain't gonna have it. And so we started out kind of toxic, but we quickly, became on good terms because I think for one, he respected me on the court and respected me as a person. And also he could see I was a natural leader, so we had to come on some common ground because you have to have that relationship with those quote unquote leaders out there.
True that. Okay, so I heard 2 things, all right? And I got love for Randy, but I'm finna say it. 2 things that I heard that he did, shortly after he got this job over here. Number 1, and he just started giving away a lot of the old uniforms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That were from my era and eras before, just giving them away like they didn't matter. And so you would see guys who never played basketball over here randomly just wearing stuff as if they bought it or something. That's number 1. And then number 2, I was told by one of our mutual friends that I guess his form of tryouts was a little different. Basically, he was like, he lined up everybody that was trying out and had them go one-on-one against who he felt was the best player or the best scorer. And if they got scored on, they got cut. How true are either one of those?
It was so long ago, but I feel like there was some validity to that, I do, but what I also remember is him running us one time. We didn't do nothing but run. And he was just wanting to see who was going to quit.
That's right.
And once people started quitting, he stopped the running.
Yeah.
And so the dude he was very extreme in some of his tactics, but they proved to be effective, so I can't take nothing away from that. And we have a real cool relationship now, so
yeah,
shout out to him. But yeah, it took a while to come around to his style, just because it wasn't a style that worked for me.
Gotcha. But everybody wants to go out with a bang. You hear people say that, I want to go out with a bang, and that means different things for different people. Some people mean that from an individual standpoint, they want to show out, run their numbers up, and do something worth remembering. And then you have others who want to have the ultimate team success. You guys got to the state tournament that year, got to the quarterfinal round, if I'm not mistaken, and you ended up getting beat by the eventual champs, which was Star Spencer that year. Shout out to my boy Phil Harris, he was on that team. But what do you remember about that run? Once y'all got past the getting to know each other and you guys as a team started to actually gel and put wins together?
It was one of them, it was new in the beginning, so you really didn't know what it could be. But then once it started going, you start feeling like, okay, we can really make a run here. And then, we started making our way through that 4A run, and we were having success. And so, we became a unit, and it really felt like, we could make something out of this. And, we started making our run, but we hit that block in the road, I guess you can say. And it was tough, because that was that was the end, of that group and that run. And, that was the end of basketball for me, so it was tough. And, and I didn't want to see it end like that, but that's just the way it went, It didn't go that way.
I can remember also that summer, we were allowed to play one more summer if you're unsigned or whatever. You ended up playing with Coach Carter, the Oklahoma Hustlers, which I didn't see that coming. And I can remember we had a conversation one time, and you were telling me that that basically in a roundabout way the fire was still burning for you to play. And I dare I say, or I believe you said that you were actually considering pursuing it past high school if that was an option. But number one, how was that summer? Some of your teammates that were on that team, and when did you feel like you got it all out of your system? Talking about basketball as a whole.
Going through it, it wasn't ever something that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna want to go to college for it. I'm gonna try to go push it past that, But then once that senior year hit, it got to a point where reality set in, to where after this, it was, that was it. And so it did start to become something that I didn't want to see in. But realistically, it had not been something that I was looking past high school to that point. And so hitting senior year, just being realistic, I knew it was only so far it was gonna go, because I ain't been pushing it that way, as far as, being in the gym, going to colleges and, putting the name out there, doing all those things you do and that daddy did with y'all during that run. So it wasn't even, it was something that, like I said, I did want to keep doing it. And so I went and played with Coach Carter that summer, just, to keep it going and, see what came of it. But I always deep down knew my academics were going to take me. I knew that at the end of the day, my academics were going to take me wherever I wanted to go, because I've always been, an outstanding student, regardless of everything else. I ain't never had no problem academically. And so I knew that was going to be the path.
How did that come together? Did he recruit you, or you reached out to him like, Coach, I'm trying to play?
You were that middle man, actually.
I do not remember that at all.
You were that middle person, because the only real dealings that I had with Coach Carter was in practice and at the games. We didn't really communicate a lot off the court. And, I just wasn't, at that point, we didn't have that type of relationship where I felt, comfortable, or that I wanted to approach him. So I actually had hit you up and was like, what do you think about, me playing for his AAU squad? And then you reached out to him, because I remember you said that he said, he was like, when did me and Nate ever have a problem, to where you need to call me, like he feel like he can't play for me, and I remember at that point you told me that, and then I was like, all right, and so I see what's up, and we pursued it, and I played that summer for him. And looking at it now, it's crazy, because for us to have, quote unquote, the relationship we had before, and now, me and Coach Carter talk almost every other day, in some form, whether it's text, phone call, passing each other in traffic. We always in communication, and so.
Playing a long game, man.
Yeah.
That's dope. So who were some of the teammates you played with, man? We'll wrap it up going there.
Man, we played with Ian Pons. I believe James was on that squad, James Harris. Brandon Hall was on the squad. Nick Harris, and that was really my first encounter with Nick, and we got real cool through that experience.
Was Glenn playing on that team too? I know he played with my group.
He might have been on that squad, but I don't even remember who else was on that squad. BT was on it. Yeah, BT was on the squad.
Solid then, brother.
Yeah, but the rest of the names are escaping me, and I know it's some DeMarco Guillory was on the squad. Yeah, because they used to always ride with us on the trips. We had the excursion, and a lot of times it'd be Ian, Nick, DeMarco, me, and that would be riding in our car all the time.
That's hard.
Yeah, so we had a decent squad, and we had some fun trips, because those are people, I never spent any time around, during the high school times. I was at Central, they was at Booker T. We didn't really interact or have any encounters. There was never any beef. We just didn't know each other.
Right.
And so when we played that summer together, we all got cool and we had fun, when we would go on those trips.
And got to beating people.
Yeah, exactly.
That's solid. All right, man. Here's how we'll wrap it up. This is, my go-to question for pretty much every coach and athlete that I sit across from. If you could go back to one game in the archives, man, that your team lost and they should have won, and you would go back and run it back if you could, which game is that? Team that beat you that had no business beating you.
I won't necessarily say no business beating us because they were a good team, but I honestly would like to go back to the last game, the Star Spencer game. You know, because, you know, like I said, you know, I'd have games where I would be, you know, I'd be more aggressive, other games where I wouldn't. And that was a game where I really was not aggressive from an offensive standpoint. You know, I did all the other intangibles that I always do. You know, I defend well, gonna rebound, gonna do all of those things. But, you know, I didn't produce on the offensive side of the ball. So, you know, that would be the game that I would go back to, because that's the game that always stands out. You know, it's like that was the last game, and we didn't even, you know, put it all out there, or leave it all out there, rather. You know, so
For sure.
that would be the one I would go back to.
Always an interesting question, man, because, you know, I think we all have more success stories that we can point to than the other end of the spectrum, but that other end always seems to be more present in our mind than the rest of them. So, you know, that's a wrap on the second chapter, brother. I appreciate you coming back and doing this with me.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We got to talk hoops because that's what we do. Boom.